Hi, my name's Laurence and welcome to the first podcast of Buddhist Times.
Hello, my name's Mark and we're both lifelong Buddhists and members of the Soka Gakkai International. I would like, however, to stress that this is not an official SGI broadcast. So,
How long have you been a Buddhist, Mark?
I've been a Buddhist for what seems like half a lifetime. In fact, it may even be more than half a lifetime since 1993.
93. Well, yeah, I first met this practice. That's how we phrase these things. Met the practice in 1981 when I lived in Edinburgh, and that also seems like a long time ago.
It is a long time ago.
Yeah, Mark, can you outline for people who are not Buddhists and don't know much about Buddhism, what is a Buddhist?
A Buddhist is somebody who follows Buddhism. This may sound a little obvious. And who, in our case anyway, in the case of our particular obedience, somebody who starts to chant the name of the Buddha and to set a first step along the pathway to, how can I say this, to activating their innate Buddha state.
Which is sometimes referred to as enlightenment.
Yes, although the word enlightenment for me tends to sort of alienate it and make people think, oh, that's not for me. Whereas, of course, it is. The Buddha state is inherent within all of us, and improving our relationship with that Buddha state within us is only going to bring more and more, shall we say, insight to the quality of our own lives, and to give us more and more control over our own inner lives and therefore outer lives.
But yeah, that's interesting because I quite often say to people, maybe it's a bit controversial, but I don't actually think Buddhism is a religion. I look at it as a kind of martial art. It's a way of coping with the difficulties of life. It seems to work best from that point of view as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, the first thing about martial arts, of course, is that it is included in a lot of self-defense programs, and we could say that somebody starting out with, a fair amount of baggage in their lives, shall we say, may well find that it is a self-defense. But then after that, once one has dealt with all the exterior issues that one has to deal with, like a bad money karma, owing too much money, or else not having enough qualifications or experience to find the job that one wants. After that, one goes over onto the attack, and one starts to attack life in a positive way, of course, and create a series of challenges, such as get a degree or a master's or something.
I mentioned, I think I'm happier with this idea of maybe not martial art, because Buddhists are of course pacifists and martial means warlike, but in terms of having a discipline for coping with the daily struggles of life, I'm personally quite happy with that. After all, there is no God in Buddhism. It's non-theistic, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we are atheists. Any thoughts on that, Mark?
Yes, well, I've always thought that, do I believe in God? Well, I certainly believe that there are more powerful beings in the universe moving around it than me, for example. And I certainly think that we and our planet are in a remarkably remote and unexplored region of the universe, and it may well be that anyone else out there simply hasn't got around to us yet. The idea of an all-prescient God sort of with his eyes on all of us is not one that I adhere to.
Well, personally, you're going to hear a diversity of opinions here from Buddhists, which you might find quite interesting. I don't have a problem with the concept of a creator, whether he or she or it doesn't really concern me. But the incredible order that we find in nature has always led me to believe that things cannot happen by chance. There's quite a lot of connections between science and modern Buddhism. Some of the main writers on Buddhism, they often seem to be very close to almost like Stephen Hawking, Richard Dawkins, these kind of people who are of course atheists. And I personally have always tried to find some more of a meaning to life. Any questions, Mark?
Yes, well, maybe if you'd like to tell us about your take on happiness and attaining happiness.
That's a good question, Mark, isn't it? Because it's something that is pertinent to every human being. Every human being has a right to happiness. This Buddhism has 4 core concepts, basically, that go right back to what I call traditional or classical Buddhism, with the first historical Buddha, Shakyamuni or Gautama in India. And he talked about the 4 sufferings, that we're born, we get old, we get ill, and we die. Now, nobody can really dispute those things. Even if you did think we could live forever, it doesn't look scientifically possible, or to cure all the cancers in the world. I don't think we're even close to that kind of thing.
Neither dispute them nor escape them.
No. So I would almost add an extra one, which is the search for happiness. All through, from the moment we're born to the moment we die, we're constantly trying to find our place in the world. That could be a definition of happiness. It could be almost kind of superficial happiness. Win the lottery, get that new job, find that new partner, get that classic car. I know Mark might talk about classic cars another time, but I kind of would call them, there are other words for that, quite superficial. But on a more profound level, if I am happy with myself, the person who I am on a daily basis, happy with my spiritual practices, for me that's important. And I think everybody needs some kind of spiritual practice, and I include atheists in there. I think atheism is just another form of spiritual practice. What about you, Mark? Any views on happiness?
Well, I was just thinking that you appear to be saying that that happiness is to be attained in this lifetime, rather than waiting for you to be dead and attaining some sort of post-death nirvana, whether it be heaven, the land to the west, or another, or even hell. I think that both heaven and hell are to be found in this lifetime. I think that many people are in states of hell without possibly even knowing it. I think that many people naturally have the capacity to be in some form of heaven state, and for all of us sort of in between, we need to make a conscious decision about where we want to be and how we want to be.
Well, that's interesting, because I don't know if everybody knows this, but the concepts of heaven and hell aren't just relevant to Islam or Christianity. They're profoundly embedded also in Buddhism. These are more kind of core things that almost all human beings have thought about, Maybe they don't believe them, but they're there in order to keep us perhaps more focused on how we live our lives, a kind of natural moral code, perhaps. Hell is, if we can just talk about this for a second, from my understanding of Buddhist writings, it's very important that you die in as high a life state as you can. That's quite a core belief of Nichiren Buddhism, and of course we are Nichiren Buddhists. So if you are unfortunate enough, as many people are, to live and die in some terrible war situation, well, Buddhism teaches that you may have to reincarnate in terrible circumstances, but you have the opportunity of escaping from those terrible circumstances by changing your karma. I'm just trying to talk about some of these basic concepts. We've talked about reincarnation, heaven and hell. Do you want to tell us a little bit about karma, Mark?
Karma is a word that's been bandied about a lot. I think it's a fairly simple concept. It's like a bank account or a garden. If we take the metaphor of the bank account, it's you put money in the account, you take money out. You take too much money out, you go into the red. And once you're in the red, then your life is going to become more and more weighed down by the impossibility to draw on the account. In the garden metaphor, the plants that you find in your garden will either be plants that you have chosen to put there or not chosen to put there. If you choose to put the plants there, then there is a strong possibility that they are good for your life. If you do not choose to put the plants there, then it's completely random. They may or may not be good for your life. They may be poison. They may be something much more beneficial, bearing delicious fruit, etc. I think that we also have to be contextual about karma. What some people regard as weeds, say we might give them a name such as bindweed, others will call honeysuckle, and it smells irresistibly sweet at night, whereas it can, if you're not careful, kill off other plants by strangling them because it is parasitical.
And of course, just because it's dangerous or annoying to human beings doesn't mean to say that other members of the animal or plant kingdom are equally offended by them. Other animals and creatures, insects might thrive on what we think is poisonous and dangerous.
Yeah, and if you don't believe that, then just let a goat free in your garden and you'll soon find out exactly what he thinks of those delicious thistles and nettles and nettles and so on. Yes, absolutely. I think that this concept is in fact quite an important one because there is no real defining good and evil definition. Good is what causes good in a certain set of circumstances, and evil is what causes suffering in a certain set of circumstances. When the fundamental Buddha started to chant, he had all the Buddhas of the universe and all the demons of the universe with him. And the thing is that when we look at our object of devotion, we are looking at those figures from the back as if we were there with them chanting. But who's to know which are the demons and which are the Buddhas?
Well, that's interesting, Mark. That's another word that is demon, another concept or entity, extraterrestrial force, psychic power, that's common to Islam, Christianity and Buddhism.
Let's be clear. A demon can only exist inside the individual. The Buddhahood will only exist inside the individual.
Well, that's interesting. Yes, they need hosts.
Yes.
Good and evil need hosts.
They're like viruses. The virus floating around on its own does nothing. The virus needs a host before it can grow and propagate.
Interesting. And we also mentioned the word to do with heaven and hell of reincarnation.
Yes.
That is another idea or concept that is central to all Buddhists, and there are thousands and thousands of different Buddhist sects in the world, and that's probably because it's such an old religion. Historically, about 500 years before Christ, but actually it could have even been much, much longer than that, because one of the things you're going to hear us talking about is historical Buddhas, which might be a bit surprising to people because they just think about the little statue that they have of a traditional Buddha. But in fact, all we know is that there was one person who stood up about 500 years before Christ and said, life is made up of sufferings, 4 sufferings, and we have to learn to deal with this. But before that, there must have been many people who came across, had the same idea, I would have thought.
Historically, Buddhism is a kind of a reformed Hinduism, and it picks up many of the same ideas. In Hinduism, there's also reincarnation, and it's one of the central tenets of Buddhism. I prefer to not pass judgment on reincarnation. I prefer to see it as a metaphor, because the idea of reincarnating is that you choose a certain family or circumstances to be born back into in order to expiate your bad karma, which is only possible on earth, in the flesh, so to speak.
So we actually choose our vehicle or our earthly scenario. We choose when we're going to reincarnate. We choose who our parents are. We choose where we're going to live. We choose our problems. We choose our illnesses. I mean, this is actually one of the profound truths of Buddhism.
I find that to be problematic, especially when you consider that very often these people are more the victims of circumstance than anything else. And I think that's a point of discussions that we could very fruitfully pick up another day with possibly other representatives of other religions and other philosophies.
Well, that's interesting because just as we wind up this first podcast, which is really just an introduction to what we're planning to do, let's talk about 1 or 2 ideas we're going to be looking at in the next few episodes. We've already mentioned one, which is to do with the circumstances under which people choose or don't choose to incarnate. Any other thoughts, Mark, what we might be looking at?
Well, I think one of the most basic ones is learning how to be happy in this life, in this moment. Whether you're in the context of bereavement, whether you're in the context of illness for yourself, for your loved ones. We are also talking about, and it's going to come back to me in a minute, Laurence.
Well, yeah, meantime, while Mark's trying to remember that, I think we definitely want to have a look at big social issues and how Buddhism relates to them.